Lee Summit is your destination for big city vibes and small town charm.
Head to the downtown Lee Summit Farmers Market, where local meets fresh. Then grab a cup of coffee and discover a variety of shops and boutiques just around the corner. Continue the fun in downtown Lee Summit at a retro arcade bar. Discover your new beer at one of our 6 locally owned breweries. Cool off with some handcrafted cocktails at happy hour. End the night with live music and good company. Lee Summit, Missouri.
Hello, Lee Summit. Here's your flash briefing for the week of May 6th. City Council will meet for regular session Tuesday night at 6 in Council Chambers in City Hall. If you can't watch, quickly catch up on City Council meetings by subscribing to the Council Debrief newsletter, which breaks down 3 to 4 key agenda items. Subscribe at cityfls.net. This week, May 5th through the 11th, is Drinking Water Week. Let's celebrate the value of clean, safe water and the critical role it plays in our daily lives. Stop by Water Utilities at 1200 Southeast Hamblin Road during business hours this week to grab some goodies and a refreshing drink from our hydration station. The city has partnered with the Community Blood Center for a blood drive on May 13th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the city's maintenance facility, located at 1971 Southeast Hamblin Road. The time to donate is now. Find a link to register on the city's website. And mark your calendars for this Saturday, May 11th, for the Farmers Market Spring Celebration from 8 a.m. to noon at the corner of 2nd and Douglas Streets. The first 100 kiddos will have the opportunity to decorate flower pots and plant a special flower for mom. You don't want to miss out on the fun. Learn more at downtownls.org. Thanks for listening and have a great week.
Welcome to the Lee Summit Sign Department. We are going to walk you through our process from start to finish. We make signs as needed here. It's not like we just go out into the field and place a speed limit sign here, no parking here. Our traffic engineers, they go through and they'll do field studies. They'll send us down an engineering work order for us to go out, place new signs or remove signs as needed. Coming from the material, our blanks come in and they're just aluminum blanks. We can put our white, our red, our fluorescent yellow, green, whatever. And basically what it looks like is just that there. Throw it up into the roller. And once we got it covered, take it to our work table here, and Tim will cut the corners, cut all the access off to where it's lined up right. As far as the plotter and the software that we use, there's a street name sign there, and he's gonna go ahead and print that out on the plotter so you can see the plotter and how it operates and runs. There's standards for the height, even just on letters on the sign blank. Basically what we have on the computer there is it's pretty much set up to those. And it goes through, it's got a very small but sharp needle that goes through and cuts everything out, letter by letter. Once that's done cutting, our next stage would be bringing it over here. Currently picking out the sign letters right now. We call it weeding or picking or however you want to call it. Next, putting it on the transfer tape. Then after it's taped, we bring it over to the roller. That's where we apply it to the actual sign blank. And we'll roll it through one time just to get the air bubbles out. And the last stage is basically just taking the transfer tape off the front of it. And there's a finished product of the street name sign. We'll take you out to the field and show you our process that we go through. We're going to go out and follow our sign guys, get something installed for you. This is where we check our underground utilities. Tim, you got AT&T?
AT&T is back here.
Evergy, Google, so we should be good to go. We normally put all of our stuff together out in the field. Then once the base is installed, we'll go ahead and put the post in there. These come up too. Perfect. And that's how we do it. Simple, quick.
It's Member Pryor.
Thank you, Mayor. Quite a few of us are getting questions. I know I've gotten a few questions about the plan, so I didn't know if, just for the public knowledge. I'm not a politician. I feel like I'm just an average person in Lee Summit. They have a football field set up. Inside these cones are their football fields. Our two-car garage is we're gonna bring the driveway back through here, and it's gonna go right here. And then, so my family has chickens. When we first got chickens, my husband said, don't treat them as your pets, treat them as chickens, because we're going to be eating the eggs, and I would like to use them for meat. So don't treat them as your pets. Well, we now have 6 chickens that I consider my pets, and I will not let him kill for meat. So we live downtown, and we love living downtown. These are my children. The first one's Lincoln, and Amira, and Sophia, and Caleb. This is a great neighborhood. Downtown is one big community, and all of the kids get together and they play basketball, and we like to walk to the farmer's market. Here, hold my hand. It's an easy walk, probably less than 10 minutes. The farmer's market has always been a very important part of my life and my family's life. As a matter of fact, when my daughter started kindergarten, I dropped her off and I was going shopping at the farmer's market right behind Lee Summit Elementary. And I was teary-eyed because she was my first and she was going off to kindergarten. And Terry, the butterfly lady, the one that's in the purple shirt, and she used to make little butterfly stickers for everyone, she gave me a big hug and was just so empathetic to the fact that my daughter had just started school. How are you guys doing? Doing well, how are you? Yeah, very good. A lot of the farmers there, they've watched my kids grow up. I love Lee Summit in general. I love that it still has a small town feel while embracing growth and the arts and diversity. And I feel like downtown specifically embodies that. My kids go to Lee Summit Elementary, and a lot of their teachers live downtown, and a lot of the business owners from downtown live downtown. So when we're out walking downtown, we see so many people we know. I lived in Africa until I was 5, and then we moved to the United States, and I've lived in Lee Summit since. Oh, a lot of my childhood, my mom was a single mom, and I feel like I was essentially raised by my community and being on council, and it's just such an important way to give back to the community that raised me.
I state your name.
I, Mia Pryor,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I possess the qualifications
this day of April 2022. The election process was fun. I got to go door to door and talk to people, which is my absolute favorite thing to do, is talking to people and learning about people. I even had people inviting me into their house for dinner or inviting me back to their house to meet their spouse. And I knocked on a door, and the lady that answered the door was my kindergarten teacher. So it was a lot of fun. Is it on? Hi everyone, I'm Councilmember Mia Pryor. Thank you very much for coming tonight. I have one on, can you not? Okay. Maybe I went. I love being a council rep for District 1. I know everyone says this, but District 1 is by far, in my opinion, the best district. Raintree Lake, that's part of District 1. I love that community. Actually, my husband and I got married at the clubhouse in Raintree Lake. I really love all of South Lee Summit. I love the growth that they're going to be experiencing soon and that they've already experienced. I wanted to say that if you guys have a concern, please come tell us what your concern is, because we can only address and help with what we know. We're there to kind of bridge that gap between constituents in the city, and we're the voice of our constituents. I'd like to call to order the Community and Economic Development Committee meeting Wednesday, May 8th, 2024. May I please get a roll call?
Vice Chair Pryor.
Here.
Councilmember Hodges.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Here.
Mayor Arth.
Here.
We have agenda management. We're going to flip-flop items 4 and 5. Can I get an approval of the agenda?
Chair. I move for approval of the agenda with the changes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez. Councilmember Hodges.
Aye.
And Councilmember Pryor.
Aye. First item of business, 5A, the approval of the March 13th, 2024 Community and Economic Development Action Letter. May I please get a motion?
I move for the approval of the March 13, 2024 Community Economic Development Action Letter 20,
Second. Yes.
I have a motion and a second. May I please get a roll call?
Councilmember Hodges. Aye. Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye. Item 5B, the discussion, liquor license procedures, and Chief Forbes is going to give a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, committee members. Travis Forbes, the Chief of Police for the Police Department. And I apologize, we had to get this agenda in pretty quickly, so this presentation wasn't attached, but we can certainly share it with you afterwards. I thought I would go through the liquor licensing procedures. It is obviously up to the council, the procedures that we follow. We simply apply the law as it sits. I do have some potential recommendations that could address some concerns that have arisen recently in this year's relicensing procedures and new licensing procedures too. So I'll save those to the end and just talk about the common types of liquor licenses that we have include a G1, which we typically call a bar license. So that's selling liquor by the drink, not in packages necessarily, although it does allow it. It gets rather complicated, the types of licenses. A G3 is the second type of license that we see very commonly, and that's a restaurant license. So that would be any restaurant that sells food and liquor, and I'll get into the differentiation between the two in upcoming slides. And then a new license, new meaning we added this in 2023 to respond to some changes in the market that allows for amusement places selling retail liquor as well. This would typically be like a golf course, bowling alley. We're also seeing pickleball and that sort of thing come up too. So what's the difference? Really a bar license, so that would be, going back real quick, the G1 type of license. It has to do with access to minors. So, you know, there's the movement is to not allow our minors to be exposed to a bar as opposed to a restaurant. And it has to do with the retail sales, and we'll talk about that in a second. In our particular ordinance, it says a minor can be accompanied by a parent or legal guardian if they're between the ages of 16 and 20. Obviously 21, you're no longer a minor. Restaurants have no restrictions on the presence of minors, so they can come and go. It's not restricted by our licensing procedures. So I don't want to necessarily name businesses, but any sort of restaurant that sells the majority of their products or food, but they also have liquor that you can buy to have a drink with your meal. There's no restriction on minors at those establishments. Same is true for the amusement places as well. So how do we differentiate the two? What is the difference? A restaurant has to sell over 50% of their gross income in prepared meals or food. And frankly, I didn't know where that number came from myself and had to do a bit of research of why that number was picked, because it's also consistent with our region. Kansas City, Missouri, the City of Independence, City of Blue Springs, they all have this 50% requirement. And what I found is it wasn't just drawn out of thin air. this is very common in the insurance industry to set a 50% parameter as well. There's a significant difference in insurance premiums for a bar versus a restaurant. Something I didn't know, and I'm not an insurance expert by any means, but it makes sense why that number was set. And again, we're very consistent with the region. There is, I think, our provision allowing minors between 16 and 20 with a parent and legal guardian is a little different. Not everybody has that, but 50% is pretty consistent. We did find one city in the state of Missouri that had a different calculation, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. The amusement place, again, this is straight from the definition, places that allow things like golf or bowling, but also it has that same provision where those proceeds have to meet, or it can be calculated in that 50 percentile of gross sales to determine whether it's an amusement place, a restaurant, or a bar. And again, we've seen several of these pop up. Golf courses are a good example, driving ranges, things of that nature, where they didn't sell the amount of food required, but when you consider their other gross receipts, they do hit that mark. So the history of our licensing procedures is our license definition of a restaurant, that 50% definition, has been around at least since 1988. Beth Morano from our law department did some research. It's hard to go back much further than that, but there was a recodification in 1988, and that 50% has been established at least since then. In 2012, there was a structural change in state law that required us to change our city ordinances at the same time. I wasn't around at that particular time, but prior to that, they had a process to submit gross receipts to prove that the business hit those marks that are defined by law. So if a business was not meeting that 50%, they were actually not in compliance with the license requirements. And they removed that. If you ask me why, I really don't know. I can't tell you why. But when we added the T license in 2023, we realized we have to be able to determine if the businesses are meeting the requirements per the ordinance. We can't just turn a blind eye to it and not verify those receipts. So we added that gross receipt submission back into the law. So it existed prior to 2012. I don't know why it was removed, and so it was put back in. So we have had some businesses this year who have had challenges in meeting that restaurant definition. Some of the businesses have said, you know, we're really kind of a bar. We're just going to get a G1 license instead of a restaurant license. So we're accommodating those businesses too. Some of those businesses have said, you know what, we're a T facility. We need the amusement license. We're going to go with that instead of the restaurant license because we don't know if we can ever fit that 50% definition. It leaves some businesses still wondering, well, we don't quite know what to do because we're neither one of those. We still feel that we're a restaurant. Obviously, it's up to the council to decide what to do. A couple of things that we have seen is Springfield, Missouri actually has a 60% definition for a restaurant with gross receipts. So the alcohol can be up to 60% of sales. That's a little unusual. We didn't find that in any of our comparators regionally, but it is an option that could be taken. Another option is we've asked different jurisdictions, what do you do if you get a business that doesn't meet the requirements? And got a variety of different answers. Some jurisdictions said they're out of luck. They either have to get a bar license or a closed shop or whatever. But some jurisdictions we found gave a conditional license that allows the business to continue to operate while they work on their business model to try to bring their sales more in line with the license that they have. So an example is we could theoretically offer a conditional license for next year, which, by the way, the licenses run from July 1, or the new budget year, they go with the fiscal year, so essentially July 1. So we are coming up on new licensing time. And we could say, you have another year to adjust your gross sales, and I think some businesses were kind of shocked. They really didn't track their gross sales, and so by the time it came time to report, they were kind of surprised that their gross sales were slightly out of whack for the license. But provided it's an opportunity, they may be able to adjust their sales through pricing structures or specials or whatever it may be, because some of the businesses, and I don't want to name specific ones, but were very close. They were sitting at 51 or 52%, and a slight tweak would probably get them there. So that's a potential thing that we could do. I would not recommend offering a conditional license in perpetuity. I would say, perhaps a license for a year would be fairly generous to allow them to change their business practices to see if we can get them back into compliance with the particular license that we've issued. Those are a couple of approaches. Changing it to 60%, obviously if you do that, it brings in questions about minors and access to establishments that, according to insurance industry or to others, could be considered a bar. I haven't really talked to Springfield to see if they've had any issues or concerns with that, but that's an option. Or the conditional license at least provides our businesses a chance to continue to operate and see if we can align the license more with their business practices. So a couple options and I'm sure there's others too, but we will certainly enforce whatever revisions are made to the ordinance. If there is a desire from this committee to make adjustments, we can talk to our legal department about making those adjustments to the ordinance and either bringing it back to this committee or bringing it straight to council. So I'm open for questions if you have any.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
Just quick clarification, if I could, Chair. Chief, were you saying, like the Springfield example, 60% of gross sales were liquor or food?
That's actually liquor. So I would say that's a more lenient license than what we currently have or what our comparator cities around here have. Okay. Is that 60%?
I couldn't tell if you said food or
yeah, sorry,
liquor.
I should have clarified that.
It's a lot of numbers, a lot of percentage.
I know. It confuses me rather quickly.
Thank you.
And I also say that we don't have the ability really to offer a conditional license as the ordinance sits today. I think that would be out of my scope as an administrator to make that decision. So if we do go with an approach such as that, I think it would require some sort of ordinance change.
Okay. That's all I have, Chair, for now.
Thank you. Councilmember Hodges?
So I know you said Springfield is at 60, but we could technically go higher than what we're at, but not quite to 60, right? Like we could do like 55 or, sure. I mean, I don't know if it's that much of a difference, but I mean, just to not go.
We could, yeah. I think the council has the ability to go 52.7%.
Right. Well, because I think if I'm right, sure. Remembering right when I spoke, I think the one that's actually here was like 51 or like just barely over. I thought that I might be wrong. 52, okay. So barely over, but just enough to where it's like, okay, if we gave her like a business like that, some wiggle room that didn't realize that once, she's adding up the receipts or whatever, that, she fell the other direction. And because one thing that I'd hate to see is we're forcing them to raise prices to meet what we've changed on them. And I don't want to do that to people who are, regulars or whatever. And then they're like, well, what's going on? And so I don't, that's the direction I definitely don't want it to go, to where we're asking them to do that. So I would be in favor of, like 55 is kind of where I'm at. So.
And I had the same question. I'm like, where did this 50% come from? And finding out that it's tied to sort of national definitions for restaurants and the insurance industry made sense to me. And it made sense to me why the other jurisdictions near us have that same percentage.
Commissioner Arth, do you have any questions?
I have one question. You said it's tied to the national percentages and insurance percentages. If it was changed to 55%, would that affect how the insurance companies cover the place of business?
That's a great question. Again, I'm a little bit out of my depth going into and answering questions about insurance. I probably know more about vehicle insurance and those requirements than I do liquor licensing. I don't know, and I don't know if probably insurers are quite different. Just like when we insure our homes or our cars, we price shop and we look for the best deal, and they probably have different rules. So I don't know if there's a consistent 50% rule for every insurance company. Maybe there's some that allow some flexibility, but I did find that that's kind of a standard that most insurance companies go with. And I don't know if they make them submit receipts like the city does, or if they just kind of go by the city licensing and say, oh, the city has you licensed as a restaurant. You must be within that. You must be following the law, so you must be in that 50%. So I'm not sure how they go about verifying it either.
Okay,
It's a good question, though.
thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez?
Thank you, Chair. Chief, so it sounds like there's one establishment that has a concern, and I think they want to speak here shortly. Are we aware of any others?
Yes, there were, and I think they have till May 15th, so they have one more week to submit this report, so there could be more. But there were other businesses. Like I said, some of them have said, we're a bar, we're just going to go ahead and get the bar license. Some have said we're an amusement place, we're going to go with that license. We've tried to be very helpful in explaining the different license types and their different options. But I think there are still, not just the individuals who are here tonight, but there are, I hate to put a number on it because there could be more, but a handful maybe is a way to describe it, of some businesses that are trying to figure out what to do, whether they should adjust their pricing structures and business models or go with one of the other licenses currently. They just aren't represented here tonight.
So, I mean, obviously, I don't want to hurt any business within our city. At the same time, I think these three categories were set, I'm sure, with a lot of thought behind it. It sounds like they're consistent with the market. They're consistent with peers across, in the geographic, surroundings of Lee Summit. And it's kind of like I wish we knew how many other businesses were impacted, because I think it's a dicey situation when you're changing policy and ordinances to accommodate one or a very small group of in this case, businesses. So I just want to make sure we're cautious and careful about that. Definitely am willing to accommodate, and I don't know, maybe I'd like to hear the parties that's here maybe kind of testify a little bit. Yeah. And if there's a way, to do some kind of conditional license for a year, if it's just 2% difference, I don't know if there's a way to, kind of tweak that in the next year. I mean, I'd be open to that, and definitely don't want to hurt anybody. But I don't want to change our policies just kind of as a knee-jerk kind of situation or to accommodate one business. I think we need to be careful with that, in my opinion. So anyway, I don't know if that makes sense, but.
Yeah, I will comment that the vast majority of restaurants met the requirement, so with the receipts that were submitted. So not saying that they're any better or again, I think without the requirement to submit gross receipts, I wouldn't be super comfortable as the administrator of the liquor licensing provisions not having a verification process, because it's in my blood, so to speak, as a law enforcement officer, to make sure people are following the law as it's written. But I think we didn't have it for several years, and some businesses were a bit surprised themselves at the gross receipts. And given an opportunity, it may not be, obviously I'm not in that business, so I'd hate to speak for them, but it may not be too difficult. It's a challenging question for sure, but we did have several that their gross receipts were well within the margins.
Chief, to that point, have we had many challenges with minors in more the bar?
I will say that we devote resources to our what we call bar patrols. We have periodic bar patrols, and they stay very busy. I'm not saying our bars are a problem or anything like that, but it's just common sense that if you mix alcohol with human behavior, sometimes you get bad results. Not always, but we do have more problems in our locations that are considered G1 licenses than G3s.
For the record, I like bars.
Well, I do too, but
For the record.
some of us can behave ourselves, you know.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chair.
Sure. Yeah, just word of caution, if one of these businesses that was a restaurant wants to just become a bar, there's a greater buffer requirement from residential uses and zoning in the UDO, so we'll coordinate with PD. Their staff member that monitors this is always in contact with us, but just word of caution there.
Okay, thank you. And I do have a couple of questions. So from my understanding, it's a lot of downtown businesses that are affected, but most of them are small, privately, like small businesses. So I hate to see it affect small businesses like this, but so during the day, like my family's gone into Stewie McBrew's during a Saturday afternoon, and there's a little bit of drinking, not a ton, but my kids like their spicy balls and tacos. But so we go in there and we eat, and it doesn't seem like a bar-like atmosphere. It seems more like a restaurant-like atmosphere. So is there any way that, and same with Arcade Alley, I know a lot of people have birthday parties there and like after soccer parties. So is there a way that somehow we can make it, because it's mostly nighttime that there's an issue, correct? Or is it?
Yes, I would say the majority of challenges we have are probably in the night. There is no way to really flip the switch, as Mr. Johnson pointed out. There's buffer issues and things of that nature. Once you get a license, you're pretty much locked into that license as far as your business model. I will say we do have some businesses who are very close, 51 or 52%. We also have some businesses who are in the 70s, who are a good distance away from the requirement. And when we could not find a jurisdiction in Missouri, we didn't look at Kansas because they have different state laws that has a definition that would accommodate anything in the 70s. So, but no, there's not really any model. I think you'd have to get a separate building, separate facility in order to kind of flip a switch and be a minor-friendly place in the day and a bar at night. I think that creates challenges with state liquor licensing and zoning and things of that nature.
Okay. And then I know, like, as far as downtown Lee Summit goes, they have a lot of the pub crawls and things that are going to push them, like the big events that they have that are going to push them maybe over that 50% threshold, when that's really not like an accurate business model, because they don't always serve the amount of alcohol they do, like on St. Patrick's Day weekend. How does that matter when they're factoring all that in?
No, there's no current way in our ordinance to exempt any sort of special sales or anything of that nature. And I will say not all the businesses impacted were downtown businesses. Some of them were, but not all of them were downtown businesses, going back to that too. But yeah, there's no way to really exempt and say this part of our sales was for a pub crawl or a special event, and this part was for just normal business activities.
I just feel like we're harming small business doing this. I don't know. Is there, so places like, I know the golf park on 40 Highway and then Arcade Alley, they're allowed to use, currently they're allowed to use like the amount of money they sell for golfing or for the arcade, that factors in, so it's only, or how does?
Yes, that's what the T license was considered with those types of business models in mind, because you could say that the golf course, for example, is not set up necessarily to be a restaurant, but they have other amusement activities to where they're not just a bar either. They're not just selling liquor. They're the vast majority of their proceeds are for amusement type activities. Does that make sense, or did that answer your question?
It does. I guess where I'm confused is so if a minor is going into a bar, it's probably because they have a fake ID somehow or something. Somehow they're leading someone to believe that they're not a minor if they're getting alcohol served a lot of times. So I guess I just don't understand how taking it, or by enforcing the 50%, if most of the time, like families or young kids are going to be in there, it's during the day, and during the day is not when PD and fire are running all of the calls to the bars. So I don't know. There's just really no easy solution, I guess.
Yes, it's definitely a challenging issue, and I don't have the perfect answer for you, and kind of why we're here. We obviously have to enforce the law as it's written. I know the state has very definite views about minors being in bars, and for good reason. It's understandable too. Exposing children to liquor in that fashion is probably not what anybody wants, but how do you define that? It's a tough one for sure. But I understand how they came up with the 50% back in the 80s and how it's carried through today. So I don't have a good answer for you, except, you know, some businesses have definitely met the provisions and have a very similar model to where they tend to have more of an adult clientele in the evening too, and they still met the provisions with their gross receipts too. So I guess I would say it's definitely possible to meet those standards, but I can see why some businesses may have not realized that they may have fluctuated from those standards over the period of time that we had where we didn't verify gross receipts.
Thank you.
I don't think I gave you a good answer, but it's tough.
And then, since we're not in a public hearing, would there be a way to go ahead and do public comments so we can hear what they have to say before we discuss it, or?
Yeah, I believe that this is a discussion item, so there's no action necessarily being taken. So if you wanted to allow public comment at this point and open dialogue, I believe that would be okay.
Do we have any public comments?
If it's up to you, she hasn't given her card, but
Okay.
I can go ahead and get it from her now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Chelsea Underwood. My address is 708 Raven Raymore, Missouri. So what I was gonna say, I'm glad you guys let him talk first, because that kind of like gave us some ideas, or gave me a better idea. As far as the like conditional license, I'm perfectly fine with that. My April sales, I've already corrected the problem because it was that small of a percent. A slight price increase did it. And I've always kept my prices low to appease the families. And there are some places, like he said, that are super high, and you know, some pricing for some restaurants is outrageous, and I don't want to go too high because I want to keep my customer base. That's why I keep my prices low. But like I said, I've corrected the problem with the small percentage, and I have no doubt that I can do that for the remainder of this license and for next year. As far as, like she mentioned, 55%. Sorry, I feel like the TV's blocking you. I do back all the other businesses in Lee Summit, and I want to support them and get them in the same boat I'm in. At 55%, I think is a good percent. 60 is good. As far as the insurance that he mentioned, we do self-report to our insurance every single year. Well, I know I do. I can't speak for others. Nothing has ever changed because of my sales. It's also very close, so I've never had them ask for any more documentation or anything like that. Because our business has been there for 14 years where we're at. I've been the owner for almost 5 years, and I would hate to have to change our business model in such a short amount of time. I sent in letters to Faith and to the chief of many families who would be very upset if after 14 years, I've seen kids this big and now they're teenage, going to college. I've seen them all, and I would hate that I couldn't do that anymore until one day they walk in and I'm like, sorry guys, it would be heartbreaking. We're a big family where we're at. And I think it's the same for many other businesses. I know Arcade Alley, Pat, and Main Slice, he's been around for just as long as I have, if not longer. And Stewie's, Justin's been there for a while, and I would hate to take that away from them as well. I have families who come to my restaurant who just 2 weeks ago went to Arcade Alley for their children's birthday party. I support them, so I would like the 55%. I feel like that would be a better buffer for everybody. As he said, the 80s, I think, was when that ordinance was made, and that's quite some time ago, and sometimes changes need to be made to adapt to the new ways of life. That's it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Chair. I don't know if this is for Mr. Bouchek or Chief. From a legal point of view, I have a question. Or Mr. Johnson. I think the idea is, it sounds like it's, in this case, we're concentrated more in the downtown area. It's kind of where a lot of the challenge, she's not, okay. Has anyone else from downtown kind of spoken up about this?
I've gotten calls.
Okay. Well, then I guess since they're the only ones here, okay. Kind of addressing their point. If she's willing to kind of work with us, maybe on a conditional basis, I think that's fair, rather than change the whole ordinance at one time right now, until we have more businesses maybe speak up. And at that point, I think it'd be appropriate to consider a higher percentage. But I don't think we should take the lead, not knowing what the rest of the business owners are. We don't even know what they're asking. They might be calling some of you or some of us, but until they come and kind of, or go to the city staff to kind of request something, I mean, I don't think we should, again, change policy until the business owners that have these licenses come up and speak up to our staff. I think that sends the wrong message, in my opinion, if we're just randomly switching ordinance information. And totally agree, I don't think we should ever limit families from enjoying these kind of experiences for whatever parties or after soccer games. That's not what I'm saying. And at Stewie's, we've done the same thing with our family. But I just think until we cross that threshold, in my opinion, I don't think we should take the lead on being proactive to change the percentage at this point. If they're here and they need some help, I think I'd be open to just granting them some kind of conditional license for the next year. And if it works, great. And if not, then we reconsider it and maybe go to the 55%.
Madam Chair, I will say that the 55% is not going to correct every business as well. So there still may be a business or two that is outside of that figure. So it may cause still some not solving the problem wholeheartedly. And the council can obviously do whatever it wants.
And I'm just throwing that out there because that was the number that was thrown out there.
Yes.
But I'm not necessarily advocating for that percentage. But
the conditional license, we could give it a shot and see what happens is one option. And if the council or the committee at a future date sees that that's not rectifying the problem to the extent that they wish, maybe entertain a change to the percentage or go with a change to the percentage. It's completely up to you. And we'll enforce whatever laws put in front of us. So we do measure based upon a 3-month receipt and not necessarily an entire year. Beth Morano is here from the law department and reminded me of that. So, I mean, technically, this particular business, if they have April, May, and June receipts that are under that 50%, we could grant them a license without conditions. But I'm not sure that's going to solve it for every business that we have in Lee Summit. Some of them are way over that 52%. Some of them are in the same boat, very, very close. Some of them that were mentioned tonight are pretty close. So just trying to help make sure that you're all informed about the solutions and the possibilities.
thank you for mentioning that. And I don't want to speculate or request something for, I don't even know what businesses we're talking about specifically, but I realize the downtown is unique. And I don't know if Mr. Johnson, maybe if that group of owners and operators wanted as a group to maybe create some kind of a district that we could maybe be more specific with and have a more higher percentage, then I'd be open to that as well. You know, if the downtown owners and operators, if that was of interest, and, you know, to help them with that percentage if they're kind of barely above the 50. But again, until we get them kind of together to kind of come before us, I don't think we should be proactive and change the ordinance just by taking our own initiative. I think the business community needs to come to staff and request this. It's my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm in a unique position as a police chief who's over liquor control. But I will say, you know, obviously with the downtown market plaza, we're very excited about that. We see it as a potential to draw lots of families down here. Again, when you mix bars and families, sometimes that makes us a bit nervous in law enforcement. So just something else to consider. But again, we enforce whatever laws are put in front of us, but just something else to consider.
About like we're throwing around the conditional thing. So what will you explain that again? So what would that mean for?
Well, there's multiple ways to do it. I think a year is a fairly generous amount of time to allow a business that's very close to maybe tweak pricing or maybe tweak specials that they run, and it might not take much more in food sales to kick over that 50% to where they can easily keep a restaurant license. So this would allow us to go ahead and grant them a license to have another year now that they see the requirement to submit the receipts to make those adjustments. And next year, if they hit that 50.1%, it's not a problem to issue them a license. If they don't, I wouldn't want to perpetuate that and say we're going to give you a conditional license for the next 10 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you for explaining that.
So if I'm understanding correctly, they only have to technically meet that 50% threshold for 3 consecutive months, and then they get the whole year's worth of liquor license?
That's correct.
Okay.
So obviously it'd be problematic if a place, and Beth may want to speak more to that, but it may be problematic if they do it for 3 months and then they forget it for the other 9, but maybe Beth can clarify that a bit more.
Thank you. Hello, Beth Morano with the City Attorney's Office. And the current ordinances that we have does define substantial quantities of foods by looking at it at a 3-month time frame. But the ordinance that creates the licensing, that issues the license, we ask for receipts for the year. One way that we might be able to look at people that are kind of on this bubble of 50% is we might say, okay, you've submitted your year, you're not hitting the mark. But let's look at like April, May, and June receipts before it's time to renew those licenses. And with that definition, I feel like we could potentially renew that license if they've met it for 3 months. But if we want to consider a conditional license and look at it for the next year and see where they land, we can do that, but we'll probably need to create an ordinance that creates that conditional license so that we can do that too. So there's maybe a little leeway within our existing ordinances to look at 3 months for people that are really right on the bubble. Probably not going to help people that are at 75%. But a conditional license gives people a little more time to try to meet it, but we would need to do an amendment to our ordinances on Chapter 4.
Thank you.
So it sounds like, she said they've made some adjustments. It sounds like they might have some flexibility within the current ordinance to maybe work things out, if you've made those adjustments. Sounds like they might be okay.
I would personally be in favor of the conditional license, or at least discussing that before council.
And if we have direction from the committee, we can work with Beth here in the law department and come up with some options so you can actually lay eyes on what the ordinance may look like. Is that correct, Beth?
Okay, thank you. I just don't want to see any businesses have to close this. I want to give them a little bit of a buffer time to correct it.
And we don't either. Obviously, we just have to enforce just do my duty and enforce the laws that are on the books, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be open to that. Yeah. That's it. No, that's it. We've kind of talked about it in the roundtable.
Chair, if I may ask just a quick question, kind of procedurally, and it's really probably a question for Chief Forbes. how much time do we think we're needing, and what process do we want to follow in order to bring? If I think about it, just off the top of my head, we could ordinance if there's time, and then back before this committee at the June meeting, and then it could go to city council after the June meeting for adoption prior to the July 1, if that was enough time to allow.
Yes, yeah, we're our deadline obviously is July, because that's when the licenses start, so we'd want to give enough time.
Correct?
I'm sorry.
It's July, so that would help the businesses because July 1st is when they have to apply for their new license, or is that when the new
They're
one
in the
takes an effect?
application
Okay.
process right now, and when's the CEDC for June? The 12th. So adoption would be the Tuesday after. That would be. It would work, yes. It'd be tight, but it would work, yes.
The other option could be to bypass the next CEDC meeting. However, when we think through that, we would have to have something prepared by on the 20th of May, because our next meeting is the 14th, and that packet is published tomorrow. There's no way that we would be able to have the ordinance ready for that meeting. So at the earliest, and I don't even know if that's possible to draft the ordinance in a week. And then we don't have a meeting the week after that. Our next meeting would be June 4th. And then it would be June 11th for it to be adopted, because we'd have to have 2 readings. So.
Which one works for?
That option is a little bit better probably for licensing procedures, and obviously we're missing some members of the council, and we don't know if there be any resistance to this from the council, other council members, but that would give us a bit of a buffer to discuss things further or make further revisions if we're not comfortable.
So that option brings it back to CEDC, or that option takes it straight to council?
That would be straight to council. Yeah, the straight to council option, if that's okay with the committee, we can take the direction, and then we can start working on the ordinance and get it in front of council as soon as we can have it prepared.
I like that if it would be easiest for you guys. I think that's good. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Forbes.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is roundtable. All right, the meeting is adjourned.
Ooh, I've got a staff roundtable.
Oh, yep, nope, sorry.
2 quick things. Nice job on earning your first meeting. Second thing, I just wanted to wish Chief Forbes a happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Commissioner Arth, I think she's ready to sing. All right, the meeting is adjourned as of 5:43.